Welcome back to the league that means nothing to round two here on Go Again Gaming. Remember, the stakes have never been lower. Today we have Kenneth Shivers on Enigma versus Lynette Natras on Azalea. I'm Ian. I'll be casting for you. It'll just be me this time. Normally I've got one of my Irish compatriots around, but had a bit of a busy week, so it's just myself here today. This is an interesting matchup because obviously Azalea is just a powerful deck. The focal point of the Go Again Gaming empire is the Azalea cult, after all. And now with Azalea, her ability to dominate arrows is a great way to sneak through damage and push damage against a lot of heroes. Obviously, a little bit more difficult with Enigma because of her ability to play cards with ward. Um, there are some notable exceptions. One of the key cards for Azalea in this matchup is going to be Murkmire Grapnel, which says that damage can't be prevented. If you can dominate a Murkmire Grapnel, not only will the ward pop when you leak damage over the blocking card, but it will force all ward on board to trigger an attempt to prevent the damage and fail. Now, for Kenneth, I imagine the defense reactions that Enigma is very capable of playing between Unravel Aggression, which draws a card if you pitch a chi. Unmovables are going to be super key. The standards of Fate and Sync, Fate Foreseen, Sync Below, the two premier defense reactions in the game, as well as other things, which are like Dead's Blue Mist, which if you pitch a chi, not only does it give your opponent's attacks -1, it prevents on hits from triggering, which could be crucial depending on what Azalea is really threatening with. So this is looking like it could be an interesting game. Two powerful heroes, easily in the top tier of Flesh and Blood right now, are going to be playing against each other, and I'm not entirely sure how this matchup goes. Now, if you would ask my local Azaleas, whether or not this is a good matchup doesn't really matter to them. They have a serious hatred for Illusionist. Illusionist can cause them infinite problems. Azalea is very good at attacking once, going tall, as it's called, with one big arrow. And if the Illusionist can get around that, they might be in a spot of bother where maybe there's not a lot that they can do about it. Either way, with that, I'm going to throw it over to the gameplay and we're going to see what happens. Kenneth really thinking this turnover. Maybe he ends up in the right position is sometimes just to pass. But no, we have what looks like a Miraging Metamorph, a beautiful 7 power attack. Pitching 1. Now, Miraging Metamorph has been a key card for Illusionist for a long time because a 1 for 7 is an absurd rate. And we've got the armor being given up early just so that Lynette is never stuck in a position where a Warmongers gets played and she's unable to use it. And the full block. Miraging Metamorph, in my experience, a lot of the time, while it has Phantasm, it just says, don't pop me. Because when you pop it, only bad things can happen. Like Prism can drop an Arclight Sentinel and you can like, cool, pass. My game is over because you have 2 Arclight Sentinels in play. But let's see what we get from Lynette on this first turn. Tunic ticks up. Always important. Never forget your Tunic. If you haven't taken any game actions, don't worry. You're still in the start of turn phase. You're fine. Now, we're really thinking this one over. I'm not entirely sure or super familiar with what Sandscour Great Bow brings to the game that Death Dealer doesn't, as a huge Death Dealer fan myself. But yeah, look at the top card of your deck. You may put an arrow from your hand or top of deck face up into your arsenal. And if you do, it gets an aim counter. So obviously we're playing with some very heavy aim counter gameplay, which if anyone has watched Az's content, obviously he got to spoil the Azalea Armory deck, which is very, very cool, very strong. And knock the death whistle. So we're starting things off early. So we're going to knock and we're going to activate Azalea. A very interesting thing for me now is looking at knock the death whistle in this build. You could conceivably knock the death whistle with his in this deck and use that to find the arrow you need for your Sandscour Greatbow, which is a fascinating interaction. As if you have no arrows in hand, like knock can just bail you out while allowing you to keep cards. But anyway, we've got this Judge, Jury, Executioner, another card spoiled by Go Again Gaming. Damn, is this the As Tribute game or what? Yeah, Judge, Jury, Executioner, some of my favorite art on a Flesh and Blood card. Lynette obviously going to activate Azalea, pop that into the arsenal, bottoming the or thinking about it, perhaps. So obviously Judge, Jury, and Executioner is a really powerful card. If it hits, your opponent has to discard down to one card in hand. And now, that is assuming they're not able to use their hand on defense, which is a bit tricky against an illusionist because they're often able to play out a lot of their hand. Yeah, we have an Azalea activation from Lynette, putting that red infecting shot. Oh. Or do we? Yes. We're going to put that red infecting shot to the bottom of the deck and put that Judge, Jury, Executioner into the face up into the arsenal with Dominate and an aim counter. Thanks to the power of Sandscour Greatbow. Now we're going to play a Deadeye. Oh my god, what power. Deadeye, if your arrow has an aim counter, not only does it get the +3 buff, but it gets the ability for you to look at your opponent's hand and discard a card, which is for anyone again. I throw back to my time playing Magic. For anyone who's played Magic, Thoughtseize is busted when in a game where you need those cards in your hand every turn to keep the pressure. Whereas if you're Azalea and you are not being put under pressure, you get to do whatever you like. Here we have 8 Dominate coming in at Kenneth with 2 very powerful on hits. And naturally, if you're Azalea, you get to order those on hits however you like. So we can have JJE on hit. Your opponent goes down to one card and then ask them to discard the other card. Yeah, so stripping the hand, dealing 5 damage. Really powerful, really good first turn. About as good a turn as you can get if you're Azalea. And just buying a free turn entirely. Now, obviously, the lack of Arsenal can be quite painful here if you were wanting to make full use of that Skullbone Crosswrap, but that was a pretty good turn. After all, when your opponent has no cards in hand, there's not a lot they could do to you. Just take up Tunic and pass. Which I believe is what we're going to see here from Kenneth. Just, yeah, Tunic and draw. Just looking at the playmats as well from those heroes, like not only do we have that beautiful Japanese Enigma, we have that beautiful Japanese Enigma playmat, and obviously the net with the Taylor playmat. So these are some players who love their bling. And now we have an activation of Sandscour Greatbow, and looking at the top card, thinking about what to do with it. Is it going face up into the arsenal? Is it an arrow? It looks like it. No, wait, maybe not. Yes, yeah, we've got a Bolton shot going face up into the arsenal, gaining an aim counter. Um, Obviously, anytime an arrow is put face up, just gets an aim counter. Really, why? Who needs crow's nest? Now, bolt and shot is a brilliant turn extender in every ranger because if you can give it even a slight buff, you can just it's go again, it's reload, it's an extra functionally an extra bow activation. Now we've got a memorial ground popping judge, jury, and executioner back on top. Why not? Only one, only one copy, but maybe you want the second judge, jury, and executioner, which allows for another Azalea activation, a dominated on hit effect again. Bang, aim counter, card to the bottom. Now let's see, does Lynette have the buff and the card to follow this up? So dominate is active. Sometimes you really don't want your opponents to have cards in hand. And a lace with Blood Rot or Blood Root if you've picked up that Azalea Armory deck. I personally picked those ones up. Nice, little bit special, something a little bit different in my deck. Pitching a bolt and shot, sending another dominated judge, jury, and executioner for 8 on hit. Please discard down to 1 card in hand. Lynette having trouble on her D20 finding what she's looking for there. And a ripple away activation to make sure that on hit, no blood rot is created. Some sneaky tech. A friend of mine was a big fan of Ripple Away into KO. And we block with a Phantasmaclasm, which might actually have been, can occasionally be very relevant in this matchup, just by virtue of the fact that throwing 9 and taking the only arrow out of Azalea's hand can be a huge deal. Obviously, less so with something like Sandscour Greatbow in play. So, yeah, discarding a second tenant of Chi Wind, which is a sneaky good card in Enigma. Transcend turns it into a 5 go again attack, which blocks for 3. Blocking for 3 obviously is huge. And now we just play the first aura of the game, Shimmers of Silver. Powerful aura from Everfest, +1 to each illusionist aura. Whenever you attack, your first attack gets a +1 counter. But again, this is a card that, on the face of it, you might think, oh, it's fine, I'll deal with it in a turn or two, but it really gets its value by then. And that becomes a huge problem, especially for a deck like Azalea, which is not attacking a huge amount, because you really need to send something threatening to get your opponent to block, and then need to decide if you have go again, are you going to really use it to kill an aura? Let's see if Lynette can go a turn without stripping her opponent's entire hand with that Judge, Jury, and Executioner, because really, 2 turns in a row, that's how you want to be starting this game. But remember, life total isn't everything. The only point of life that matters is your last one. And if Kenneth is behind now, that doesn't mean he's going to be behind at the end of the game. Anyway, we have an endless arrow loaded. And Lynette thinking about what to do with the rest of their hand. And it's just going to be endless arrow for 4. So it looks like we had a very arrow heavy hand going into this turn, which is, yeah, sending the endless into the shimmers, staying disciplined. Like, you're in a good spot here. You can afford to take your foot off the gas a little bit and let this happen. Gains you an arsenal. But here we have Spectral Manifestations pitching a blue, creating a Spectral Shield. If there's no other auras, which there is not, you put 3 counters on it. It just becomes a Titan's Fist. And really, on attack, first attack is free. For those of us who are very familiar with MST Limited, making a Spectral Shield with 2 or 3 counters on it is a very good way to win the game because you can just do that and play protect, get down Mr. President, as my friend would call it, or protect the Queen, where you just keep that spectral shield alive and use it to beat your opponents. Using the rest of your cards defensively, occasionally sneaking in an extra bit of offense, but really that spectral shield can carry you through a lot of the game. Lynette just opting to take 4 here. I have a 5-card Azalea hand. A 5-card Azalea hand can present 15, 12, like 15, 17, 22 damage depending on the arrow. And yeah, we're following this up with a Rage Spectre. With, oh, a Lost in Thought. Even better. Lost in Thought. Player reveals their hand, and a card from it gets sent to the bottom. An attack action, even. So, are we losing a Red in the Ledger, or are we losing a Spire Sniping? Either way, Lynette is in a position to judge, jury, and executioner. A one-of card for the 3rd time this game. So let us see what she decides to do. Gaining a ponder from that Lost in Thought. And Kenneth playing Warmongers. Oof. That is brutal. That's a tough one. That is a tough one to play. Now, obviously, again, long draw half glove really goes a long way to mitigating this, as does your bow. But Lynette is in a bit of a pickle here. Both players have chosen war. Warmonger's Diplomacy, a very powerful card ever since it came out in Dust Till Dawn and really debuted in the hands of Rhea Adams when she was playing Icelander. I personally had a lot of experience against it as someone who was a Runeblade main and played it to death when I snuck it into a Briar deck, built the deck to play around it, and then used it to make my other Runeblade opponents' lives miserable. It was great, and it was a phenomenal card against Azalea, who really now needs to think about what is the best option for her, because that card in Arsenal can't be cleared. You can't use that Skullbone Crosswrap, you can't activate Azalea. All you can do is find a way around it using something like the Long Draw Half Glove. So there is obviously the option of playing that Memorial Ground, playing that Long Draw Half Glove, and then putting that Judge, Jury, and Executioner in Arsenal, but that's only going to be 5 non-dominate. It's not really where you want to be at. So we've got Long Draw Half Glove. Put 2 cards from your hand or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. Your next arrow gets +4. So we're losing 2 from hand, which tells me that we're expecting something. Yeah, a Murkmire Grapnel coming in for 8. So again, key card in this matchup. If it has an aim counter, it gets +1, but more importantly, damage that would be dealt cannot be prevented. That Spectral Shield is not doing anything. It is not stopping anything. And we know that we don't know what that last card in hand is, really, because 2 have been put to the bottom. So it could be anything. We just know it's not a Rain Razors because we have seen Lynette's hand over the last turn. So Kenneth obviously thinking about what do I block with here, because 8 damage is a lot. It's going to eat that Spectral Shield. Do I give up 3 cards? It's a tough call to make. Giving up 3 cards here keeps your life total high and allows you to just crack back with 4. But again, you've got an Azalea with a 5-card hand who does not really need to think about something, and you can't play another Warmongers following this if you've already chosen war. So Kenneth is really thinking about this block here. This is going to be a tough call for him because you need to find the right balance between blocking and presenting damage. Yeah, blocking 3 and just using Hold the Line as well to block another 2. So that's a 5 block total. So losing the Spectral Shield and taking 3 from Murkmar Grapnel, going to 27. So really, this is looking quite good for Lynette. And there we have an extended art Rising Sun, Setting Moon. Because we've played a blue, we get to draw a card, put a card from our hand on the bottom of our deck, and transcend, going into the next turn with some chi, which really, if you're Kenneth, you're looking to spend on something like Manifestations of Miragai and start pushing some serious damage, keeping some serious protection. You don't really want to chi if you're just using it to make shields until you're sort of further into the game, and those shields allow you to steal some tempo or gain some much needed life. So Kenneth, still under the effect of Warmonger's diplomacy, pitching a chi, activating Enigma, making a Spectral Shield, and just sending it in for 2. 2 go again. This is all kosher under Warmongers because Enigma is an instant, which is not an action. And then we'll play a Restless Coalescence again, is also an instant. Move that counter across, send that Restless Coalescence in for 3, and then at any point as an instant can make a Spectral Shield using Restless Coalescence. It's very, very interesting to note as well how quickly those life totals kind of even out when Kenneth was able to send some disruption Azalea's way, because usually it's Azalea doing all the disrupting. Anyway, we have an activation of a Skullbone Cross Wrap. So flip the card in your arsenal face up, opt 1, and obviously it has go again. This is so key to a lot of Azalea's game plan, which is digging into your deck. Now, with Spire Sniping flipped face up, you get to look at the top 2 first, because that is a trigger that goes on ahead of resolving the Skullbone Cross Wrap. You get to reorder those 2 from the Spire Sniping and then opt, which is usually means shipping one straight to the bottom, keeping one on top. For those Magic the Gathering Ponder enjoyers, it's a lot of that. Ponder, really great card, a lot of fun to play with. Preordained is the same. So now let's see what Lynette chooses to do with this newfound information about what the top of their deck is. Activating Azalea, shipping that Spire Sniping, grabbing this Bolton Shot coming in with a name counter thanks to Sandscour Greatbow. I have to imagine that there's a buff being played here to allow, Seek and Destroy. So 7 Dominate coming in here with this Bolton Shot. On hit, reload, and due to its power being greater than space, has go again as well. So Seek and Destroy, super powerful attack, super powerful on hit effect to add to an arrow. What with its ability to not only disrupt your hand and arsenal if you're trying to set up for a big turn, you don't just lose the card, they're just gone. They go to your yard. They go to your discard, which is really powerful because there's not a huge amount of recursion in Flesh and Blood. And I think LSS have been very particular about the kinds of recursion that they give, because every card game where graveyard recursion is a very powerful mechanic, it just is. It allows access to multiple cards. We've seen things like that with Chain in the past, where having access to 4, 5, 6 cards in your banished could just allow you to have an 8-card hand on your turn, or block with 2 cards and still have 5, 6 cards, which is crazy. Kenneth lining up his blocks here. We've got a 3 block with that second tenant of Chi Wind, creating a Spectral Shield using Restless Coalescence, and that is Ward 4 plus block 3, preventing any reload shenanigans that may or may not have gone on. and more importantly, preventing that seek and destroy from being triggered. So now we have a Sandscour activation, closing the combat chain. As Lynette is going to look at the top of their deck and decide whether that or an arrow from hand is going into the arsenal. That was a quick look. Tells me that is not what Lynette is looking for right now. Dropping that drill shot into the arsenal and just sending a drill shot for 4. Bit raw, 2 cards left in hand, or at least 1. So we're guaranteed to have an arsenal here. And drill shot, not super relevant in this game unless you can put a card on Meridian Pathway. Not Meridian Pathway, Traverse the Universe. But then again, you're going to want to block with that. Whereas it might be better served if you put it there. It can force your opponent to block awkwardly with something like Final Spring Tunic. But instead, we've just got a pitch of a Homage to Ancestors to Unravel Aggression, blocking 5 from the drill shot. And since no chi was pitched to play it, you don't draw a card, but more importantly, it is covering the 5 damage. Card to Arsenal, and a quick pass. Now let's see what Kenneth decides to do with his hand. Perfect. Good start. We dissolve reality. Take that Arsenal slot that you're so happily relying on using for your cross wrap next turn and just pop it to the bottom of your deck. Hold on there. Is everything okay there from Lynette's side of things? I am not sure if I saw that go to the bottom of the deck. And then Warmongers. Absolutely stuffing any hope that Lynette might have had for a big turn. Now, we just have an endless arrow hanging out there in Lynette's pitch zone, which may have been forgotten about from the previous turn. Now, with both players again having chosen war, let's see what Lynette decides to do. I imagine we're going to see a Sandscour Great Bow activation and get an arrow popped into the arsenal. Really, the combination of something like Dissolve Reality and Warmongers isn't exactly ideal, because you're going to be putting your opponent in an awkward spot to use their arsenal if you play the Warmongers. But obviously, I imagine Kenneth, knowing on his turn he would not be able to play Warmonger, a Dissolve Reality after resolving Warmonger's Diplomacy. But we'll always take a ponder. We'll dig an extra card deeper. And yeah, pitching a Codex, activating that Sandscour Great Bow, floating 1 resource and looking at the top of the deck to see if it's an arrow that you want, or if there's an arrow in hand that you want instead. Nope, just loading a Sleep Dart, which on hit will turn off Enigma's hero text, stopping the ability to create spectral shields using chi. So here we go, a 1 for 5 Sleep Dart on hit. All hero card effects and activated abilities are turned off until the end of Kenneth's next turn. So if you're planning on transcending this turn, maybe you will be wanting to block out this Sleep Dart. But if you're planning on transcending, perhaps your hand isn't exactly blocking a whole bunch. It looks like Kenneth might just be taking 5, turning off his hero text, and just going to 22 and using his hand as aggressively as possible. So we're going to have a ponder trigger for Lynette, draw a card, and now you have a choice of 3 cards to put into the arsenal. But we've made it through 2 Warmongers. We haven't fallen too far behind, but that is a false sense of security that you can get lulled into by illusionists. They don't always need a whole lot of a life lead to start winning the game. In fact, I've seen an awful lot of illusionists in this league and in many others where they will just start winning at 5 life and never stop. Obviously, problem here is we can finding another way to get that chi, and so we're going to activate Meridian Pathway to allow auras to be played as though they were instants this turn, which is a great way of getting a blue into the pitch zone for levels of enlightenment. So now we've got +2 and go again. And as it was given a grain that tips the scale, so we've got a 6 go again card. So this is Kenneth obviously just trying to equalize the life totals a little bit. And then another 6 here coming in with Command and Conquer. It's not often those are the modes you see chosen on levels of enlightenment. Normally speaking, you always want to draw a card because drawing cards in a card game is powerful. If you ask most card gamers, like real card gamers, they'll say the 3 strongest words in Flesh and Blood, in Magic, in Yu-Gi-Oh, in Pokemon, it doesn't matter. Draw N cards. Draw a card. Draw several cards. Now, Lynette just taking the Command and Conquer, letting that release attention go to the graveyard, going to 19 life. So I expect the 4 cards in hand are just worth slightly more. Yeah, we have Bolt and Shot, activate Great Bow, look at the top card. Cards go straight back. The arrow that is wanted to load is already put in, and it is a. I am not overly familiar with this arrow now. It's one of the ones that I believe came out in Dynasty or Outsiders that has received a minimal amount of play. I think it is Barbed Undertow, which, when you think about it, in the MST meta, is actually super powerful because it allows you to name a color. And then until the start of your next turn, they can't pitch those cards. So really in a deck like Enigma that is so blue heavy, or a deck like Zen that is so blue heavy, or like New that's so blue heavy, or even like Prism, which is super yellow heavy, if you can hit with this Barbed Undertow. Now obviously it does not have an aim counter, so the effect is not active. But I think in a Sandscour build, a 1 for 5 that can heavily disrupt your opponent's ability to just play the game of Flesh and Blood is really, really cool, really powerful, and sort of where you want to be at. Kenneth very much thinking about this one, just going for a sink below, sinking a card, drawing a card, considering whether or not he's taking the other 4. Taking the 4. Now, Barbed Undertow actually is a card that I saw some experimentation from Brody Spurlock when Dromite was the best deck, because being able to name red uh, was an unbelievable power play against a deck that was 58 red cards and 2 blue cards. It just really meant that if they had a hand that required to pitch at all, it might not be playable. Just counting the graveyard or searching. Anyway, we have a Lost in Thought. Again, a bit of hand disruption from this Enigma. Lynette having to reveal their hand. And one attack action And that one attack action is going away. Gotta hope that that arsenal or the top of that deck is going to be an arrow, because otherwise that might not be much of a turn here from Azalea, drawing what is effectively an Azalea hand, like the famous Runeblade hands of old, where it's all of one type, and there's not a lot you can do about it. And then just sending in Enigma Chimera. So this is just a good rate attack. 2 for 6 of blue, allowing Enigma, if they want to, they can transcend. Azalea going to 13 and really looking for that arsenal or that skullbone cross wrap to get them out of what is probably a bit of a sticky situation now. Really, you never want to be taking off the pressure. If you do, you might just be ending the game. Yeah, it's a Rain Razors card straight to the bottom there by Lynette. Means it's not an arrow. It's going to have to be an Azalea activation. Yeah, play the Rain Razors. Play the Release the Tension. And then we're going to activate the Sandscour Greatbow, I presume, with the hope that the top card of the deck is going to be an arrow. Yeah, pitch Deadeye, activate the Greatbow. Look at the top card. If it's an arrow, we're okay. If it's not an arrow, we're not doing great here. Well, it's left on top anyway. So, yeah, and then Codex of Frailty. So Lynette gets to get back any arrow she wants, gives a Frailty to Kenneth, which can impede any spectral shields that he may make. Not that we've seen a lot of them out of this Enigma. This has been a very much a beatdown focused Enigma deck. I love the art skills of Kenneth Shivers, drawing the perfect Frailty token and getting a Murkmar Grapnel back because it's a 0 cost arrow, allowing a preventing any damage prevention isn't going to work here, and sending it in for 10. Nope, 9 even. And now with that second ponder created, Lynette is going to have their pick of options here in terms of what do we put into the arsenal for this turn. Now, Kenneth really thinking about this one, because obviously 9 is not a bad number. It's especially a good number when you're at 18, because when you're representing 50% of the life total and no defense reactions from arsenal, could be a spot of bother, because obviously if you've got defense reactions, you want to pocket them, you want to hold them, you want to play around, dominate. So with Lynette, with no cards in hand, let's see what Kenneth decides to do here. It's really thinking this one over, because obviously we're getting to the sort of critical turns. The damage ceilings are getting quite high. Like, if you're leaving your Azalea opponent with too many cards in hand on their turn when you're at 18, you're not safe. I have been attacked by Azalea for 22 with 1 arrow. So it is hard to say what the right call here is, but sometimes keeping your life total high doesn't matter when they just start dominating a big arrow, because 2 or 3 of those big arrows and you get chipped down pretty quickly. Let's see. Yeah, we have a block with the Traverse the Universe. Kenneth getting a Chi, deciding to get the shiny one, obviously. Why not? Quick shuffle up, and then let's see if there's any further cards committed to defense here. making sure to cut. A way we've seen by a lot of the players in the league that means nothing, just to make sure everyone knows everything is above board. You get to choose the order in which the cards get stacked back on top of each other. Now, cheat to hand. And is Kenneth just going to take the damage? It does appear so. He's just going to take 7, go all the way down to 11, and just use the hand instead of trying to preserve life total. Use the hand to put Azalea on the back burner, because when Azalea gets to keep a bunch of cards in hand, she's doing good, she's eating well, she's really threatening a lot of damage. But the minute you have to start giving up 2 or 3 cards, your potential on your turn to turn basis really drops. And it can drop off very dramatically very quickly. And especially when you're looking at something like a Manifestations of Miragai pitching a chi. So this is a card that when it enters, it gets 2 counters. If it enters the arena by pitching a blue, it gets pitching a chi, it gets up to 4 counters. And now we have a Uphold Tradition activation as well, and a whack of the camera by Kenneth. He's just so excited because his Manifestations of Miragai has 5 counters. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, that means it has Ward 5. And Ward 5 means it attacks for 5, right? Wrong. It attacks for 10. And it's just going to send it in. So 10 damage has been thrown at Lynette. And now we've got a Restless Coalescence coming in for 5 go again. Blocking 5 for Lynette. And then creating a Spectral Shield. Shield is just for 1. But now that was a very powerful turn. So that Miragai currently has 0 ward, doesn't do anything, but has swung in for 10. So, a 3-card 10, it's a pretty good rate. Restless Coalescence can just poop out Spectral Shields, which is also pretty good. And we've just got the life totals have all of a sudden gone very heavily in Kenneth's favor. That was very quick, Lynette, just to block as little as possible, really hoping to use this turn to clear a lot of that ward. Because if Kenneth gets to keep all of that, we're in serious trouble. Yeah, getting a Murkmire Grapnel off this Knock the Death Whistle. Again, like I said, key card in the matchup. Murkmire Grapnel, really powerful, goes into the arsenal with Dominate, and with that aim counter from that Sandscour Greatbow, it's going to be on base 5 Dominate. Damage can't be prevented. Ward doesn't matter. Nice ward. Who cares? Who asked? I didn't. And it will just chew through that entire board state. Azalea activation into the arsenal, ready for 5 Dominate. See if Lynette has any more buffs to play. Because really, if you can crack that up to about 8 damage, you're in a really good spot. 5, yeah, playing this Lace with Bloodwrath from hand. And a Lace with Inertia. So we're going to see a 10-11 dominated Murkmire Grapnel, because it came face up into the arena from the deck, threatening 2 of the 3 plagues from outsiders, Inertia and Bloodrot, 2 of the most powerful ones as well. Frailty is good too, but hey, we're in a good spot here. Does it not have a name counter? I wonder. Maybe I have a misunderstanding of the Sandscour Greatbow, because surely I read that as if it comes in from your deck face up, it should have a name counter. Now, this obviously is not lethal, but with the attached blood rot, could be lethal. Kenneth could, ostensibly speaking, go to 1 here, but he will be having to sacrifice his entire board state. Not that the mirror guy is doing a whole heap here, it is ward 0 after all. Kenneth really thinking this one over. I imagine there has to be some amount of defense here that can be mounted. And the thing is, as well, if Kenneth has to give up his entire hand to deal with this, those auras, other than that spectral shield, can't attack. That's the beauty of the balance of Cosmo. It's like your first spectral shield is free for Enigma, sure, but those other auras cost you one. He's really thinking this his way through this block because obviously this is a pivotal moment in the game. Lynette is really putting an awful lot onto this Murkmire grapnel, hoping that it's going to deal with the problem. And pitching a mirror guy, I imagine, yeah, a red unmovable. So this, even if I was correct and Sandscour Greatbow gave it that aim counter, this is an 11 cover up. So that is 11 blocked, no damage leaked. Murkmire grapnel did its job, did its best, tried its best, bless its heart. No plague, no disruption, and Kenneth is just left with four go again. Six go again in a Restless Coalescence, a one from a Spectral Shield, and anything else that he can throw. So we've got six go again coming in first. Really awkward number here for Lynette. That is a 2-arrow block, or no way you can get through that without taking a point of damage. Lynette's going to have to think about this one quite a bit. Kenneth still with cards in hand. I think we're getting to a stage of the game where normally you want to give up Tunic first, but with a resource coming up next turn, you may want to hang on to it and give up that Skullbone Crosswrap. Because Lynette has been playing off Arsenal quite a lot this game, so it's not been overly relevant, but it really depends on the state of the hand. There we go. We have a 2-card block here. So, and the Skullbone Crosswrap as well. So covering 6 damage, taking nothing from this Restless Coalescence. Now, if Kenneth has something big to follow this up with, we're in a lot of trouble. Yeah, we've just got Spectral Shield for 1. No go again, just 1. Got to play around Astral Etchings. Taking 1. Kenneth making another Spectral Shield. And Arsenal and pass. Now Lynette really needs to try and crack some of this board. Because while that Restless Coalescence is getting weaker, it is generating more life, effective life for Kenneth on a turn-to-turn basis. Using Tunic, using Sandscour Greatbow. Look at the top card. Let's see. Yeah, straight into Arsenal. It's a Spire Sniping. Let's Lynette look 2 cards deeper. See if there's a way to dominate this arrow. It's like Spire Sniping is a great card for looking in, for knowledge of your deck, top deck knowledge, but it is not exactly an arrow you want to be shooting at your opponent. 1 for 3 is not a rate you want to be at. Yeah, cards going back like that. Now let's see what Lynette decides to do. This is a real, like, dominate would really help here. Yeah, there we go. Memorial Ground. Well, let's put an attack action with cost 1 or less from your graveyard on top of your deck. I imagine with a card in hand, hopefully being a buff, we're going to see that Murkmire Grapnel remake its appearance. Because really, that's what Lynette needs. We need a complete board reset if we are Lynette here. Not only do we need a board reset, we need to force cards off Kenneth. And unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult to do in this spot, especially with Dominate. Dominate, sure, you might clear the board, leak some damage, but you're leaving your opponent with the cards to kill you, especially if they're not in an awkward spot here. So we have an Azalea activation. Mark Grapnel into play. Into that arsenal. Should have a name counter here. Obviously, forgotten about here. After all, the stakes. Probably getting to Lynette, playing for nothing. And we just send in a 4 dominate with 1 card in hand. If I was a betting man, I would say that's not a buff, but it could be a Rain Razors if your opponent is cheeky enough to think they'll get away with just a sink below. But yes, Murkmire should have a name counter. Yeah, it's just the sink below. Blocking 4, sinking a card. Does Lynette have it? Does she have it? It does not look likely. Because otherwise, that card would get windmill slammed right here. No, looking like it's just covered up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why it's important to remember your aim counters, any triggers you got. So your opponent is not obliged to remind you. And I mean, we're competing for nothing here. So if you win some of nothing, then I have less of nothing. No, we've got a 5 go again from the Restless Coalescence, and Kenneth with a card in arsenal, some cards in hand. Lynette full blocks the 5, using a resource for levels of enlightenment, making it a 3 go again. Giving up a card here. And then all we need is some kind of follow up from Kenneth here. Yeah, Miraging Metamorph for 7. Powerful card. And what does Lynette have to say about it? Any poppers? Nope. Has 3 block, goes to 0. Powerful, powerful flesh and blood here. And a tough break for Lynette, who started this game so well, showing off everything that Azalea can be doing with Sandscour Great Bow, with that Judge, Jury, and Executioner back to back, potentially being able to set up for a third one and then getting mucked by a Warmongers diplomacy. But that was an excellent game. Really, really well played by both players. Kenneth staying cool under pressure and managing to eventually dig his way out of it. A tough break to Azalea there. Tried so hard, did such a great job managing the board state early on. But this is the thing about illusionists. If you give them an inch, sometimes they'll just take a mile and just set off running. But hey, it's only round 2. More to come. And I can't wait to see what else we have in store from both these players in the league that means nothing. And if you enjoy the league, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, you keep encouraging us to keep on doing this in perpetuity, because people love coming together and playing Flesh and Blood for nothing. Just because the game's great, they love the game. And if you like my commentary on my own, if you want me to get back and bring more people, I'm still getting used to doing it solo. Make sure you like, you comment, let me know. And if you're looking to find me anywhere, you'll find me at findals_spirit on Twitter. I've been Ian. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.